Welcome everyone to Hot Takes. I am Tara McEwen, the founder of McEwen Media. I'm a media coach where I help business owners own their self-promotion, their visibility. Today, I'm going to nerd out and do a deep dive and probably a vulnerable share on the psychology of pricing. I feel like with this trade war, we're very aware of how products are priced. And it's one thing to price out a physical product where you have materials, you have manufacturing, you have shipping, you have all of these like tactile things to put into your price. But when you're a service provider and your product and your service is you and your specialized knowledge, pricing is a whole other psychological journey. And if you're not aware of what's going on inside your mind and how your beliefs, your judgments, your values, and all kinds of other mental mindset tricks, how they're getting in the way of pricing, that could be getting in the way of you marketing to the right person at the right level and having a more successful future. So when it comes to all things sales, I'll share the learnings that I've had with McEwen Media, but I'm bringing in the expert. So Talitha Davies helps founder-led businesses streamline their sales with simple, repeatable processes that drive revenue without sleaze or burnout. With 20 years of experience and over $750 million in closed sales, she specializes in creating sales strategies that feel natural, effective, and scalable. So please welcome to the stage, Talitha.
Hi, Tara. Thanks so much for having me. I love coming on live with you and chatting about sales and pricing and everything.
I know, me too. And I really feel like pricing, it is everything, right? How you price your product, it determines how you sell your services and also how you market it. But I think that there, especially in the entrepreneur space and service provider space, not enough information is available, and it's so easy to think that you're making all the right moves, but you're not. So I remember back to when I first started McEwen Media, the closest I could wrap my head around pricing my services was the hourly rate that I had been earning at the CBC, which was the job that I did just before starting this business. So that was my awareness of how to price services. Now, since then, I've learned other strategies and tactics, but how do you approach pricing in terms of sales and helping the clients that you work with?
Yeah, I love this question. And I just want to share, I'm so happy that we're talking about this because I think so few people shy away from talking about pricing. It is a bit of a minefield. Like, it's deeply personal.
Yeah.
And there's so many things wrapped up in it. There's math, there's identity, there's self-worth, positioning strategy. And so it's a heavy topic, but it's really important. And so I typically like to think about it in 4 steps. So I begin with the end in mind. I think about how much money do I want at the end of the year? And that's how I start. What is my profit goal? So I come up with that number. And then most of us will have a rough estimate of what our expenses are. So that helps me understand, okay, this is how much revenue I need. My profit goal plus my expenses, that's how much revenue I need to make this year. And then I'm like, okay, well, how many clients can I sustainably serve this year, right? Like, if my offer takes 10 hours to deliver, how many clients can I serve a month? So if that is 5, if I can serve 5 clients without burnout, then I know that 5 clients a month, and I know I need, 60 clients per year. And so then I do 60, then I do like my revenue goal, which is 210. So let's say it's like 150 is my profit goal. My expenses are 60. My revenue goal is now 210 in a year. I divide that by 60, and then I have a baseline for what my pricing should be. $3,500 a client. That's the baseline. And that's my starting point. And that's kind of how I like to sort of reverse engineer how I should be pricing services.
Okay, I love the math side of things. I do kind of want to throw in a disclaimer. So this conversation is for information purposes only, entertainment purposes only. We're not telling you what changes to make to your business, because this approach, I have gone through this before. And let me tell you, what happened inside this crazy imaginative brain was just total chaos. For me, it's like the numbers always work. on paper. It's
Mm-hmm.
the person who is then executing this in reality. That's where things fall apart, because yeah,
Yes.
I can manipulate these numbers. I can manipulate the math. I've worked with people where it's like, oh yeah, my goal, I want to make $1 million this year. Like banana. So I want to kind of then, like, I love the math and I love that strategy. Let's now get into where people kind of go sideways.
Yeah.
Like what actually is happening inside your brain. So one of the pieces of advice that I got early on is to price your services in a way that you can get your energy behind. Similar to naming your business, because you're going to be quoting people at this price. So how do you then justify this price? And I think this is also where we're getting into the idea of worthiness. Like, what is your offer worth to someone? And I think when we're talking about like coaches, consultants, and service providers, because it's not tactile, and even with the work that I do in terms of getting people booked on TV, I have no control over the outcome. So these were all things kind of like having my brain go haywire. How do I justify this price? So how do you, like, have you had struggled with the mindset piece of these numbers? Yeah. Like, how do we wear the numbers? Yeah.
Does anyone not struggle with the mindset piece? So I think one important distinction I want to make is, to me, there's a difference between justifying price and demonstrating value. I will never justify my prices to clients. My prices are my prices.
Okay.
And I have heard in the past, I had a mentor that was like, price is only ever an issue in the absence of value. And I loved that. And I thought that was so powerful. And sometimes price is an issue, which we will get into.
Yes. Yes.
So first and foremost, I don't justify my prices. They are what they are. And I think that there are some tactics that people can do to pre-qualify, to ensure there's no sticker shock, to ensure that they're, your prospect doesn't feel ambushed or caught off guard, and it's just to like avoid uncomfortable conversations.
I'm already writing notes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Continue.
Yeah. But in terms of the mindset piece for me, because I 100% agree. I think that it's really easy for us to fall in the trap of saying we're offering accessible pricing, undercharging. And so there's a couple of things that I like to think about. So I kind of walked through the math very quickly, but I walked through the math in terms of how I arrive at a baseline.
Yeah.
From there, then I need to start thinking about, okay, if I charge less than this, I am robbing Talitha 365 days from now. So that's one piece. And it sounds cheesy, but like it is a powerful way to think about it.
Yeah.
You're kind of stealing from your future self to provide your current self a little bit more comfort. Yeah. So that's one way that I kind of wrap my head around the mindset piece. The other thing, so I've always found comfort and safety in preparedness. And so then I start to think about not necessarily all of my effort that I put into the offer, because at this point I've created it. That's a sunk cost, right? I will never recoup that. I like to think about, well, what does this offer enable my clients to do? Yes. That's value, right? Yeah. Like that's what they're paying for. They're not paying for my time. Yes, they are paying for my expertise, but mostly they're paying for what they get, that transformation that they receive. How long should it take you to do this on your own without me? That's what you offer, right? Yeah. So I think like thinking about it in those ways leaves the math aside and can help me wrap my head around any discomfort that I ever have around the pricing.
I think too, what you've introduced, and of course, I always write notes as you're talking, even though it's recorded. I know, and I do always go back and re-listen. The concept of holding on to the value and the transformation. What does this offer? What can this offer do to the person who invests in it, or for the person who invests in it? The more I hold on to that, so I have a group media training offer, and I realized actually today it works better one-to-one. I thought the group is where it's going to go because the math, right? It's an effective use of my time, but really the transformation that people go through It's their specific journey. So when that messaging, they know, I always believe the client knows what the transformation they're looking for. And if they're not looking for the pieces that they need to transform in your offer, they're not going to go for it no matter what it's priced at. So that's actually been a shift recently where I'm like, oh, I actually have to release the idea of a group offer. That math works.
Yeah.
It worked on paper. But in terms of really understanding the transformation, what this work actually does, it is better one-on-one. And there was even a belief too that, and the whole concept too of people who do offer group programs or courses, it's this idea that it saves you from having to deliver the same information over and over and over again. Because of the nature and how I work, it's so collaborative. It might be the same tools that I bring to the table, but the story is completely different because it's individual. So I've actually, was very reassured today where I'm like, no, this actually is a one-to-one offer. I can now offer it one-to-one, but then price it at a one-to-one level. So I think that that's where, the math is one thing, but you really need to understand the human connection piece of it. What is your client truly getting from this offer? And does the number match that as well?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I think there's so many situations where the maths, but it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why I really stress that it's a good baseline.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, then we need to start thinking about, okay, is this a premium offer? Is it white glove? Is it one-on-one? Is it bespoke? Because you can charge more for that, and you should be charging more for that because it requires more of you. And then, when it's bespoke or custom or one-on-one, the perceived value goes up, right? Like we do tend to prioritize or put a premium on one-to-one engagements versus group engagements. And then I also think it's interesting that you talked about like your group program, because I think as we're introducing leverage into an offer, that is an opportunity for us to be like, okay, is there, do I need to price it accordingly? Because I think that there's a lot of people that are accustomed to purchasing group programs that expect them to be priced a little more competitively than one-on-one. Because of that nature. And then I also think, and we talked about this a little bit, but your pricing, it definitely goes hand in hand with buyer sophistication. So, for example, there's a lot of luxury brands that cater to sophisticated buyers, I'll call them, not necessarily sophisticated people, but people that are used to opening their wallets and dropping a lot of money on product. So I think like when your offer is priced in such a way, it does create this illusion of buyer sophistication, which means that you need to be able to back that up with the value the perceived value and how you communicate the value.
I feel like we could spend the next hour unpacking this idea, because I think to perceive value, it also, I think a lot of, especially if I've had a conversation like this before with Annabelle King, our mutual friend, she's a brand specialist. So Annabelle and I, we both offered our services in corporate and network settings. So I understand what the value of media is on like a high level advertising perspective. So a lot of my perception of the value of what I offer in terms of getting people booked on television is based on my knowledge of how much it costs to buy a commercial spot in a national TV show or to buy an integration in there. For the average person, for the solopreneur, the small business owner, they have no concept of those huge advertising budgets. So that perceived value, I found that there was a gap there. So I realized, I actually need to not necessarily, but bring it down to a level of understanding. If I do want to serve the solopreneur and the small business owner, this is their level of understanding. They're comparing my work to the person who manages their digital ads and that price point, like that's their comparison. Whereas taking these services to like a PR company or a large organization that does have a media department in place and they have $1 million budgets, they know that my full services will make their efforts 10% better. So they evaluate that a little bit differently. So I think that's also where the sophistication of your you need to really understand what your target market understands about the value that you offer. And I think if you're moving from a corporate space into an entrepreneur space, know that not everyone has the same awareness of these services.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And it is perceived value can be a really tricky one to instill in buyers. One of the ways that I like to think about it is not necessarily in terms of inputs, but inputs from the seller, but their own inputs. Like, how long would it take you? What are you trying to achieve? And how long would it take you to achieve that in the absence of this type of support?
Yeah.
That gap, to me, is the value, and I think to a lot of buyers as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think for me too, it's how much work how much education do I want to do in the sales conversation? I think that's because to the other point too, and I think we've talked about this in your notes, that it's easier to, if you're selling a 500 or 5K offer to a $500 buyer, it's always going to be a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So selling because I think it's one thing to know the problem that you're solving, how you solve it, sell it to the person who needs it and can afford it. I think that is the easiest, that's another math at math.
Yeah.
But I know from my, but sometimes though the need and the resource ability, it changes. So I think we're in an economic climate right now where businesses across the board are cutting back. So I feel like if you're B2B on any scale, you're feeling a bit of a pullback.
Totally.
But I know definitely for solopreneurs and small business owners, I'm a luxury item. What I offer is very much it's not a need, it's a luxury. So when I realized that I might be selling to people who can't afford it and don't necessarily need it, that was a really, really hard thing for me to come to terms with, like coming down to the mindset and how our beliefs can get in the way of things. Because when I started McEwen Media, I wanted to be for everyone, right? I wanted to make media exposure, visibility, confidence, communication. I wanted it to be accessible to everyone, especially coming from a network space where I'm like, I don't want to be a gatekeeper anymore. I want to give everyone access. To then come to the realization that as much as I want to be for everybody, not everybody needs me. Not everyone can take action on this. And there were a lot of situations where the desire was there, but the means just simply weren't. And I thought that I was being kind, still, saying, hey, it's available. Are you ready to take a chance on yourself? And the coaching starts now, and all of those other pieces of advice I've been told in the past. I realized it was actually creating a very challenging situation for them because they just could not take action on it. So when I realized that, I'm actually for a different audience, there are different businesses out there that, then I'm making some gains there. Then it was, well, how do I reconcile this feeling? Like, how can I still be available to the people that I want to serve so dearly? So that's actually where I've made the decision in my social media. This is how I'll serve people. The people who can't afford me, but still want the information, it's available. That hasn't changed. But the actual business strategy, marketing to a different person. So that was a long, I've been with that decision for a long time. Yeah.
It's a hard decision. And I'm so happy you shared that because it's something that I've seen time and time again, especially with women and in particular with purpose-led businesses, right? There is this desire to want to serve as many people as we possibly can. But what I find so fascinating is you wouldn't be able to be taking the time out of your day to do these LinkedIn Lives, to have this like free education opportunities if you weren't pricing accordingly. And so it's why pricing is just so important. It's what gives you the ability to, include some benevolence into your business.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think it does require a sophisticated understanding of pricing.
Yeah.
Right. And also building the belief that, when I am priced accordingly and money comes in more freely, it does open up these other opportunities. And making myself available for people where they need it, knowing that these other offers, I'm not letting them down, but I'm actually making a strong strategic move that then secures the future of the business, which is very different than what I expected. Yeah. So one other thing that I would love to get into, the psychology of pricing, because I've also heard in the past that people will, I can't remember what the phrasing is, but basically they invest, they follow where the money goes. So especially in the coaching and consulting space, if you charge a lot of money for your service, people are going to be more invested in it because they want to get their money back. Now I have the cheapest, so the most accessible offer. I don't want to say cheapest. The most accessible offer I have, it's like a $36 on camera confidence 30-day challenge. Everyone always, it's like the social media equivalent of the January diet. I'm going to be on social media for 30 days and that's going to solve everything. And I'm like, okay, well, here's a way I can help you with that.
Yeah. I'm
blown away by how many people sign up for a $36 offer and then never do it. And I'm like, I'm here. Like, I can give you feedback. I can actually help make this easier for you. The tools are there. You just have to do it. So walk me through then, like, what is the psychology of pricing on the buyer? Like, why is that a less expensive or a more accessible offer, we just don't do it?
We have less skin in the game. Right? Like we have far less skin in the game for a $30 offer. That was very easy. Like that to me is a no-brainer. Like, yeah, sure. But because it's a no-brainer to open your wallet, it might also be a no-brainer to actually commit to whatever it is, like commit to that training or whatever. And I'm guilty of this all the time. Like, and it's funny because I know, I understand why people have them. Like it can be a really powerful tool as part of a funnel where it's almost like we can think about it like paid nurture. We are getting people to open their wallets. That in and of itself is buyer psychology. We get them to open their wallet once. We know we know that they're more likely to open it again. We bring them into the funnel and then we have, whatever our offer flow is. So from that perspective, I understand it, but it has to be a really killer initial offer to keep them, because if they don't go through whatever it is that you're offering, the training, they don't secure that dopamine hit from whatever goal that they achieved via the training, then it's hard for them to ascend to the next offer. I think like that's part of the reason why we behave that way, because less skin in the game. We're just like, oh, okay, I'm not as committed. Pricing can be such a signal in terms of commitment, which is why I think, when we have premium pricing on our offers, and when I talk about premium pricing, I'm talking about anything over $2,000. So anything above $2,000 to me is a premium priced offering. When people see that, like when they see that, I do think that the commitment that they're ready to bring to the engagement goes up. And that's important to me. And that's why I want to sell premium offers, because I'm committed. I'm here. I'm showing up for my clients. I want them to do the same. And I find that they will if they've invested more.
I love that insight of the premium offer being better for the client overall, because they're going to follow through on the investment. They're going to commit to it, because that is, especially I think with the more I make offers, the more I try to sell and engage with people, the more I realize working with me, it is an investment of time, money, but self-image. And I think that especially with the on-camera confidence piece, that self-image, it is so much easier to keep yourself small, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot, and transformation. It's a huge transformation. For me, I think it's a simple and easy ask. I think that, the transformation itself, we talked about the value being relative. I think the transformation itself is relative. Like what I'm offering is a huge transformation. And it's an honor to myself and the client to acknowledge that. And to work that into the pricing, which ironically is an easier thing for me to get myself behind than the math, because the math is like, well, what do I expect to gain? Like, how much money do I want to make this year? Like, gun to my head, $1 million every year and beyond. Like, what are you talking about? But in terms of like what I can actually get my energy behind and align my values, which is really the stuff that actually moves the needle and pushes me into decision and action. It is the greater good, right? How am I using these skills to have a greater impact? Because these skills can go anywhere. They can go back to a network, they can go work for a corporation, or they can continue to work in McEwen Media, or all these things at once. How do I want to then create a sacred space for the incredible transformation? And premium pricing, ironically, makes it attractive to the people who need it the most, right? That's another way to kind of find the ideal client is pricing it properly.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Definitely a signal. And I also think, I love that you've brought up energy twice, because I think that there's so much energetics in selling that we don't really spend a lot of time thinking about.
Yeah.
But you really have to be fully bought in to your own pricing, because buyers will be able to suss out if you're uncomfortable at all when you come to the price. So I remember I was selling high ticket coaching, and it was a year-long mastermind. It was 50,000 US. And the founder of the company was like, "Ooh, I don't know if, like, I think people are going to have to talk to me in order for them to buy this." Like, okay. And then we brought in an external sales trainer, and the sales trainer was like, "Talitha will never be able to sell that if that's how you think. Like, you have to know that she can sell that. She has to know that she can sell that. And she has to believe that it's worth 50 grand US."
Yeah. Yeah.
There was, and so it took some time. Like, I really had to, I sat in on all of the coaching calls, like the group coaching calls, so I could experience what that was like. I took a look at like we did State of the Union docs to sort of track progress of the clients. And I really needed to immerse myself in that to get behind, okay, yeah, I can see what's happening for these clients. I totally understand the value. I needed to do that. My energy had to be there before I could sell, before I would even get on a call and be like, and it's $50,000.
There's so much nonverbal communication. Like, as human beings, we are very highly more sophisticated than we realize that we are in terms of communication. So that's why you absolutely have to have, it sounds like twee advice, like price yourself at a number you can get your energy behind, but it's legitimate. You're in the room, you're selling, you're reading their energy as well. You're making sure that their needs, that they're being heard, and also making sure that they are in fact the right fit, right? Are they going to do the work to have the transformation? Because then you're getting into, you're not demonstrating value, you're proving your worth. Yeah.
Oh, and I love that you brought up worth, because I remember early on, I saw this video, I think it might have been on Instagram, and it was very sort of, it went viral, and I understand why. So it was someone saying, charge your worth and add tax. And at first blush, I'm like, yes. And then I'm like, no. I think it's a really dangerous narrative to talk about worth and pricing. Like, our pricing does not equal our worth. Our worth is intrinsic. It exists regardless of what happens to our business, to an offer, to a failed launch. And I think it's so easy for us to internalize things, and I just don't want price to be one of them. So I try. There is worth in terms of, what is this service worth to someone else? And then there is your own worth, and they are completely separate. And I just think it's, maybe people listening don't need that disclaimer, but I've needed that disclaimer.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. What's worth it to them, what's worth it to you. I've also heard someone describe her pricing strategy. If people will permit me to swear on my own channel, she calls it the asshole tax. So if someone is difficult or challenging, she charges them more. And I just thought, if they're difficult and challenging, that is the end. We're just no amount of, because to me, especially because the work that I do with people, it's my creative energy. You're getting access to my creativity. You're getting access to what happens when I hear the details of your story, what comes out. And I've been doing this long enough to know that it is brilliant. I am a brilliant storyteller, and that is my sense of worth, right? I hear that compliment all the time. And for the longest time, I would deflect it. So, I mean, in terms of like an easy way that people can start owning their worth, when people start complimenting you, don't deflect it, don't downgrade it or dismiss it. Just say thank you and absorb it and let that become part of your identity. So now when I make offers and create proposals, I know that what they're paying for is a access to a brilliant storyteller and what that does for their goals. And you can't, it is hard to put like an intrinsic value on it. It is something that you need to experience, but once people experience it once, it becomes like a drug. But that, the asshole tax, it never made sense to me. I found too that with when I was experimenting with really like super hot, what I find was super high end offers, that number was almost on the other extreme where it was too, I felt it was too much. So then I was just adding all kinds of stuff to it. Which I think just like a kind of, it's too much. If I'm adding all these extra bells and whistles, I'm now devaluing the experience for everyone. So I think it's that gut check. You do need to, know your value or know your worth and then operate accordingly. And then do the math.
And then do the math. And then if you need to have an asshole tax, go for it.
So as we wrap up, is there, I mean, because I feel like people are, they're feeling it, I don't think I'm alone in this. So what advice, ask people if they're assessing their pricing, if they're considering lowering their offers or making themselves more available, or go on the other extreme, right? Raise your prices to attract the right client. What would be one step that people can take today to gain more control over their pricing?
So I think, I find it really interesting when people are like, oh, you need to double your prices. And that can feel really daunting. And so I would say there's nothing wrong with an incremental increase. We as consumers have experienced incremental pricing increases across the board for the last 2 years. If you haven't done the same for your own pricing, I think that is a really good opportunity for you to test the waters. And so I would say, take a look at your pricing and see where and how you might be able to adjust for inflation, or just give yourself a gut check. Is this does this still feel good? Is it still exciting to me to sell this? And then I think that it's time to really double down on value, double down on that value in the transformation. This is like, it's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. It has to be so clearly articulated to people. Buyers are a little more discerning right now. Why wouldn't they be? They should be. So I think that in order to accommodate for that, just getting incredibly clear around the positioning, how you're talking about the value and the transformation is really important. I also think, to me, one of my values is flexibility. Like I want to be able, it's important for me to be able to meet people where they are. And I think that in tough economic times, and because the point of business is business, right? Like I want to make deals with people. So I think it's really important. And something that I do with all of my sales, my clients is have a discount policy. It's like across the board. What happens? How do we as a company react when someone comes and asks for a discount? I think that having that thought out for maybe all of your offers in the event somebody asks for it is just so important.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's one. I'll add it to my to-do list. But I introduce, especially knowing that social media and things like this is how I'm going to be available to small business owners and solopreneurs. I've introduced pay what you can pricing for all of my masterclasses and workshops, and it's interesting. Some people are paying and some people are not. So I'm like, you know what? I will just leave it to them. You know where you are. You know what this means to you at this point in time. So pay what you can. And that's just bonus money for me as it comes in.
I like that.
Amazing. Well, I always feel so good about the business decisions that I make when I talk to you. So, Talitha, where can people, if they want to learn more about your services and what you do, how can they get in touch with you?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn
Okay.
is the best place to get in touch with me. Yeah.
All right. Sounds great. All right. I'm sure that we'll have another conversation at some point.
I hope so, Tara. Thanks so much for having me. This was
Thank you.
chat.
All right. Fantastic.